So depending on how this progresses, we can do one more thing. Now this is Ohio, and so it can snow any minute. And so let's see what we can do about this if we want to make this look like snow. So the first thing I'm going to do is just temporarily replace my raindrop. Again, I'm in the symbol with a snowdrop. Now, actually, before I do that, I'm going to go back to the rain. I'm going to save this file. Okay, and I'm going to call this new one landscape called snow. Okay. All right, so this new file that I have for you here, we'll delete that, and we will we can use the align if we really cared to center it perfectly. To stage, okay, no, perfectly there. And of course, snow is generally white. And I'm going to delete this little. So remember, because I changed it here, it changes it all everywhere. Now remember, the name doesn't matter anymore because we did the script inside. However, just so it doesn't get confusing, I'm going to go to my library symbols and this little white dot, which is snow, and you can't see it because it's white on white, but I know what it is because I knew I was in the symbol. I'm going to go ahead and rename it to snow. Okay. And again, you can make it look like snowflake if you want. I'm just going to make it look a little more realistic. Snow. I'm making it big now, but then I'll shrink it. And so what do? I use the same script, except we understand that the dynamics of snow is a little bit different. And so we try to see if we can code that. Now snow does go down, but it goes down a little slower. Okay, so let's slow that down. We can leave this as move rain, but again, we can call it move snow, but then we have to change it here. Because remember, this tick tells it every tick do this function. And that means move it 50 pixels down and to the right. Now again, we don't need this. So if I think I want to use it later, I can comment it out also. That's another good use for comments. Or I can delete it if I know I'm not going to use it. Actually, I'm not going to use it in the snow because I'll show you why. Actually, if it was windy, I would probably use it. So let's leave it there as a comment. Okay. Now, this stuff is similar, right? After it goes to the bottom, I want to go back up and top. The part that is different is I'm going to snow speed's relatively consistent. Maybe not, we'll see. But the part that does change is when snow falls, it kind of wiggles around because it's very light, and any wind fluctuations can shift it back and forth. So I'm going to set it equal to the current X location, right? This is I'm doing the longhand versus the shorthand. Plus, I sometimes want to move to the right, sometimes I want to move to the left. I want to kind of jiggle around a little bit. So whenever you want something to happen randomly, we use our nice and trusted math.random function. Now in this case, I do want it to be subtle movements. So maybe not 0 through 1, but maybe 6 pixels. But remember, I don't want them to always shift to the right, because remember, this will either move the particle 0 pixels to the right or 6 pixels to the right, because it's the plus. Okay. But what if I add 6, but I subtract half? That means this would be 6 minus 3, so the biggest it could ever be is 3. Or it could be 0, because math random could be 0 times 6, which makes it 0, minus 3, which means the smallest it'll be is negative 3. So sometimes it'll move 3 pixels to the right, sometimes it'll move 3 pixels to the left, because remember, negative 3 is the left side. And sometimes it'll be somewhere in between, so it'll be even. If you only subtract, say, like 1, then it's not even, right? It will always be, let's see, 6 minus 1. The highest will be is 5, and 0 minus 1, the lowest will be negative 1. So sometimes it'll be negative 1, but most of the time it'll be in the positive range, because it could be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 3.2, or 3.6, 4.8. The chances of it being 0, negative 0.5, or negative 0.6 is only 20% of the time, right? Or sorry, a sixth of the time, which is what you'll have to calculate that. So let's set that back, which again gives me my 3 to -3. And so sometimes it'll wiggle to the right, sometimes it'll wiggle to the left. Sometimes it'll wiggle more to the right, sometimes it'll wiggle more to the left. Let's see what that looks like. So it's moving pretty fast for snow, so I can't see the wiggling as much. So I'm going to slow it down to maybe, we'll do 10 again. There's the wiggling. Now that wiggling is maybe a little too much, so I'm going to go back and maybe do 4 minus 2. So it would be the biggest it'll ever be is 4 minus 2, which would be 2. And the smallest would be a 0 take away 2, which is 2, -2. And now let's see, that looks a little nicer. That's a little bit better. Right? And of course, the particles are just too big to look realistic, unless you wanted that look. So I'm going to go into my snow. I think, is it this one? Yep. And I'm going to scale it down. See what that looks like. There you go. That's a little bit better. Okay. Now the only thing you might want to do, and again, I would only do this at the reset stage. The reset being the time where it says, "Hey, did you reach the bottom? Go ahead and go back to the top and set your X location somewhere randomly and change alpha." You can also change the width to some random number. But remember, we don't want it to 0, 1, because sometimes it will be too tiny. We want to multiply. Let's see, what is the biggest I have right now? Let's see, the scale, the width of it now is, it's about 7. So I don't mind it being anywhere between 5 and 10 pixels to kind of keep that general size. So we can do this. Okay. So remember, 5 plus 5 gives me the 10. Or 5 plus 0 gives me the 5, or somewhere in between. And I can do this same thing for the height. Now, if I do it this way, sometimes the width might be 10, and sometimes the height will be 5. So you'll get this weird oval. And it's like, well, I don't want that. I don't want oval snowflakes. So what I'm going to do is, whatever the random number is set to the width, let's set the height equal to that. So if width becomes 3, make the height, sorry, not 3. If width becomes 8, set the height equal to 8. If width becomes 7, set the height equal to 7. So that keeps the proportions equal, because the width and height are always the same in a circle. Let's try that, see if we can see some size changes. I'm not sure if it's changing. I think it is, because I think I see small ones, but just to check, to make sure that it's not another thing that again, sometimes the way to change things is different in HTML5 versus ActionScript. So I'm going to make it really, really big, like 0 to 50 plus 5. So that will give me 5 to 55. So that shows me that the illusion of size change was because of the alpha, and it wasn't actually doing it. So what we can do to fix this is we can change the code to something like this, which was available to ActionScript. Instead of using width, it's scale X, and we can set that to the random size of 50 plus 50, so it gets my range from 50 to 100, right? 50 plus 50, and 50 plus 0. And equivalently, we can set the height equal to scale X. Now, of course, you could do it backwards, doesn't matter. You could set the Y to be a random number and then make sure that the X equals the Y. But as long as they are the same, so you keep the ratio the same, so the snowball doesn't, snowflake doesn't get overly. Okay, let's see how that works. All right. So we're not seeing it, so then we have to troubleshoot some other issues. And the issue very likely will be with the positioning of it and where it is, because when we scale it, it might scale in different ways. So what do I mean by that? Well, when we were just kind of dropping the snowflake and using the X and Y, it was okay that the pivot point was offset, which is what I noticed, because it's still using this origin. But as we scale this object, you can see here, if I go to scale, click on this object, if I scale it, can you see how it expands and goes higher, right? So shrinking it, getting higher. So as I go higher, as I scale it bigger, it might go off stage. So unfortunately, I did this in the beginning, so all of these snowflakes have that problem. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to fix this one and put the pivot point in the center, so that now when I scale it, it scales, I could put it exactly in the center right there. Right. And so now that one is good, but all the other guys are bad. So what we're going to do is we're going to grab this good snowflake, or I can go back to the library and do it from scratch, but let's just grab that good snowflake. And this keyframe grabs all the snowflakes on that layer, but I can deselect that one and then hit delete. So I'm left with the one, and I can copy and paste, or I can alt drag also. And you can click on that keyframe again, and then alt drag all of these guys, and alt drag all those. And so let's see if that fixed it. Whoa, giant snowflakes. Remember, we exaggerate the script so we can make sure it works. And obviously it does work. So you can see the different sizes of snowflakes ranging from 50 pixels to 100, or I guess 50 scales to 100 scales. So let's go into that snowflake and let's bring back down that range. To something like 10 by, what was the scale? So 14, so let's do 10. So that goes from 10 plus 0 to 10 plus 20, 10 plus 10, which gives 20. And let's see if that looks a little better. Still too big, so, and too fast, of course, so we forgot to slow it down. So bring that back down to 10, and let's scale it down to 4. That's a little bit better. Now we got variation snow. I think I would even do one more. 2 by 2. And of course, we could technically keep scripting and make snow do all sorts of fun things. But for now, for this introductory course, I think this is a good place to stop. Hopefully you enjoyed this, and I didn't scare you too much with the coding.